Okay, we have tried the variables. Let's try and create a new file here. Let's call it arrays, or array simply PHP. And inside of this file, we are going to create an array. So returning an array, semicolon after return statement, and we are going to put banana, apple, and peach. Okay, so we are returning the array from within this file, which we are going to include now inside of our index.php. So I'm going to change these variables to array. So what happens now? I need to really associate the returned value from this file with some variable, and I'm going to call it simply array. So array equals, and then we have this include array.php. So what I can do now is use this array. So simply echo array and say I want item at index 0. So if we save it, preview it in the browser, refresh the page, and there we go, we get banana. Then if I change it, obviously if I change the index, let's say not 3 but 2, which is the last item, that we should get peach, and fair enough, we get it. So as you can see, you can return the collection of items array from within the include file and then associate it automatically with the variable and use this variable this way. So rather than having this long array, sometimes obviously you can have a very long array here inside of the file that you actually need access to it, you can just include it in one file and then include it in as many pages as you basically need this collection to have to access to this collection from. So this is the array. Let's try, say, if we create a string. So we are going to do the string. And what I'm going to do now, return a string. Let's say my full name, Sebastian Sulinski. And there we go. If I save it, and if we now go back to the index.php, now I'm going to include the string. And rather than having this as the array variable, which we still could keep, obviously, but it doesn't make sense calling the string an array. So I'm just going to call the variable string. And what I can do now is just simply echo this string in the browser, save it and preview in the browser. And fair enough, we get my full name. But let's now try and remove this return and PHP tag altogether. If I just include the string inside of the file which I'm including, refresh the page, and there we go. As you can see, this number 1 has been appended to the end of it. So we still get the full name, the content of the file, but we also get this number 1. And this is just to indicate that this include function has been executed successfully. So whenever you are including anything that's not actually enclosed within the PHP tags, if it's just a plain string, you are going to get this number 1 to indicate that it has been successfully executed. So that's why whenever you include something, make sure that you return. If it's a string, simply return it as a string rather than having this just as a plain string without any PHP tags. If we do it this way, then this number 1 is just gone from the end of the string. Okay, so this is array. We had string, we had variables declared. Let's try and use some functions. So say we're going to define a new function, custom function called calculate cost, and we are going to take one variable, one argument called weight. Okay, and what all we're going to do is very simple. We're not doing any real life kind of calculation here. So we're just going to return the weight multiplied by 10. And if I save it now, and if we go to our index.php, we simply include we use the string file here. Let's keep it as a string, basically. It should probably be called function, but let's keep it as a string. So we're including this file. That means that we have access to this function now. So we can echo calculate cost, and let's pass number 10 through as an argument. As you can see, my IDE automatically recognizes that this function is available from within the string.php. If I now preview it in a browser, we get 100 because 10 times 10 is 100. So as you can see, whatever we include, all these functions inside of this include file are now available inside of the file, which is actually requesting this file. So that's how it works. Basically, including files within other files gives us access to the functions, strings, arrays, variables, and everything else, basically. So that's how we can include a single file inside of many others. So that's one of the things. One other thing I wanted to show you is, let's say we are going to create, let's go to this variables file and let's do one thing. We are going to return OK from within this file. Okay, so it's pretty much a string rather than variable, but let's just keep this file rather than creating multiple files inside of this includes directory. So we've got this return OK. And obviously this time what we want to do is include these variables. But what I'm trying to do now is to check if the value returned from within this file equals certain string. And we are going to compare it against the OK. So if statement, and now I check include, and we are including this variables file.php, and we are going to double check it. So we're checking for equality, not identity. If it equals OK, we could actually check for identity because it's going to return a string anyway. So if I just add another equal symbol, so we're checking if it equals OK, then let's say echo OK. Else we are going to echo in a browser not OK. Okay, let's save it and preview it in a browser, and we get the warning. And the reason why this is because the file we are trying to include did not have a chance to be evaluated. When we assign it to a variable, this is when it actually gets evaluated and returns the value back to the variable we are trying to assign it to. In this situation, we are automatically checking this file for basically comparing it to this string OK here, which basically is causing this error, basically this warning. If we want to do this properly, we would have to enclose this include statement in between the brackets. Now what happens, because we have brackets around it, it will first be executed and then compared whatever value has been generated by the evaluation of this include function to the value on the right hand side of this triple or double equal symbol. So now if we save it and preview it in a browser, refresh the page, and there we go, we get OK. If it was to compare against it's not OK, then obviously we would get not OK if we just quickly preview in the browser and so on. So it's obviously the opposite of what it actually is. So that's how you would do it when you're actually trying to compare content of the include file inside of the conditional statement. It is pretty much the same as if we were to use this include statement in association with the string, let's say variable, and then pass this string to this conditional statement and do it this way. If we just preview it in a browser, refresh, now we get OK, because obviously OK equals OK as a string, and we even can check again using a triple symbol, basically meaning if it's identical, and because we are returning string, it is also comparing against the string. Obviously that works the same way. Now we know that the difference between the include and require is that include will throw a warning if it cannot find the file, either on the path which is passed through as an argument, or on the include file, on the include path, and then will continue with the rest of the script within the file. Whereas require will simply throw a fatal error for when it cannot find the file on the include path, and will terminate the entire script. Now let's have a look at this include once and require once definition. So if we go back to our browser, to the PHP documentation, on the right hand side you can see we've got require once and include once. So let's quickly have a look at this include once. The include once statement includes and evaluates the specified file during the execution of the script. This is a behavior similar to the include statement, which we've just discussed, with the only difference being that if the code from a file has already been included, it will not be included again. And include once returns true. As the name suggests, the file will be included just once. Include once may be used in cases where the same file might be included and evaluated more than once during a particular execution of a script. So in this case, it may help avoid problems such as function redefinitions, variable value reassignment, etc. See the include documentation for more information about how this function works. So it works pretty much the same way as include. The only difference is that if you call this include once, twice, or more times for the same file, only the first time it will actually execute and include the file. The second time is just going to ignore this request because it will know that the file has already been included. So let's quickly go back to our editor, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to remove all we have here, and what I'm going to do is just simply include once, and I'm going to go straight to our directory. So I'm going to use full stop / includes, and then I'm gonna go for, say, our array, and then I can use include once again and do the same thing, includes array.php and obviously semicolon at the end of the statement. So what happens here, obviously we have two include once for the same file. Only the first one really gets included. This one will ignore whatever this argument provides because it knows that this file at this location is already included on this page. So it's basically avoiding the situations, as the documentation says, about variable redeclaration, obviously function redefinitions, and so on. So that's the only difference. And obviously require once, if we just go back to the documentation, if I click on the require once, it's going to tell us exactly the same thing. The require once statement is identical to require, except that PHP will check if the file has already been included, and if so, not include require it again. See include once documentation for more information about once behavior and how it differs from its own from its non-once siblings. It's basically the same thing. The only difference, obviously, with require once is going to be that it's going to throw the fatal error and will terminate the script if we try to require once the file, which does not exist. Now, just to prove that that's how it works, let's quickly go back to the editor. And what I'm going to do here, obviously this array file, as you may remember, if you just go back to this file, it returns an array. So what I'm going to do is associate this statement here with the variable array, and I'm just going to include once this array file. So what we have now with this array is this nicely designed array. So what I'm going to do is echo, and I'm just going to go for pre-tags to nicely format our printr function with the array argument, and then echo again, closing pre-tag. So now if we save it, preview it in a browser, go back to our course, phpcourse.dev, there we go, our array. But now, second time round, I'm going to associate it with the array 2. So array underscore 2 equals, and again, include once exactly same file. And I'm just going to copy what I've got above here, paste it here, and now replace this array with array 2. Let's see what this one is going to return. So we should first see what we see now. If I refresh the page, we only see 1. And this is because our include once indicates that the include once statement has been executed successfully. So we've got this number 1, but it does not return anything because this file has already been included and we won't get access to it. Only from the first time it's being called, basically. So we've got include once here, which returns array with the value associated, basically returned from within this file. The second time around, okay, you've already included this file, so I'm not going to return you anything. Only true, basically, integer 1 to indicate that it has actually executed, but it doesn't return anything. So that's what you going to get. Exactly same thing if I just quickly change both of these to require once. Once, there we go. And if I now save it, preview it in the browser, exactly same situation. Obviously, if the file didn't exist, then obviously we would get the fatal error with require once, as opposed to the include once when we would get 2 warnings. Now I keep on calling this include and include once, require and require once a function, but in fact it is a language construct. And the main difference between the language construct and a function is that we cannot call it as a variable function. In other words, if I have something like, let's say, variable equals include, and say we have this variable.php file, I cannot now use this variable to call it as a function. We cannot do anything like this, basically. So that's because obviously this is not a function. In fact, it is a language construct. Another thing with language construct is that it does not require the brackets. You can just remove the brackets and use it this way. So you can include the file or require the file, whether it's just include or require or with once appended to it without brackets, just putting basically the path to the file in between a double or single quotes.